Okay, so have you ever read a book and just felt like there was something almost magical going on? Like, how did these authors make us feel so much?
It really is amazing, right? Like, how do words on a page make us laugh or cry or completely lose track of time?
Totally. And today we're going to unlock at least some of those secrets, right?
Absolutely. We're taking a deep dive into literary techniques, the tools that writers use to make stories really come alive.
And to help us on this deep dive, we're using the Literary Techniques Toolkit from Matrix Education. It's like having a masterclass in storytelling right at our fingertips.
I know, it's a great resource. It breaks down all these techniques from the super familiar to ones you might not have even heard of.
All right, so let's just jump right into it. Why are literary techniques so important? Is it just about sounding smart, or is there something more to it?
Well, they're definitely not just fancy terms to throw around. I mean, they're the building blocks of a good story. They're how authors add those layers of meanings and emotion that keep us hooked.
So you're saying it's not enough just to have a good plot.
Right. I mean, a good plot is important, but it's the literary techniques that really elevate a story, or that make it something special, something memorable.
Okay, so let's break it down. Where do we even begin? There are so many different techniques.
Yeah, it can be a lot. It helps to think about them in different categories. Some techniques focus on the language, like metaphors and similes, figures of speech that make the writing more vivid.
Okay, and I'm guessing other techniques shape the structure of the story itself.
Exactly. Things like foreshadowing, flashbacks, those are all about playing with time and revealing information in a way that keeps the reader guessing.
And then there's the whole way the story is told, right? Like who's narrating and how reliable are they?
Right. Things like point of view, tone, irony, those all fall into how the story is being told.
Wow, so many tools in this literary toolbox. But let's zero in on a few, maybe starting with metaphors and similes. I always loved those in school.
Me too. And they're so common, right? You see them everywhere. But they're powerful for a reason. Both metaphors and similes create these comparisons that help us visualize something or understand it on a deeper level.
Can you give us an example? Something that shows the difference between the two.
Okay, so let's say you read, "Her eyes were as bright as the stars." That's a simile, using as to directly compare her eyes to the stars. But if you read, "Her eyes were stars twinkling in the night," now that's a metaphor. It implies the comparison without directly stating it.
Ah, I see. And the metaphor, that second one, feels even more impactful, more poetic.
Exactly. It's like it creates this whole image in your mind. You can almost see those twinkling stars when you read it.
It's really amazing how much weight a well-chosen metaphor or simile can carry. Okay, let's move on. What about foreshadowing? I love those moments when I realize an author was hinting at something all along. How does that even work?
It's pretty clever. Foreshadowing is all about dropping little clues, subtle hints that something is going to happen, but without giving the whole game away.
So, like those little details in mystery novels that you don't think are important until later.
Yes. Or a line of dialogue that seems kind of random at first, but then later, boom, it takes on this whole new meaning.
I guess it plays on our natural curiosity, right? Like we want to figure out what's going to happen.
Totally. It creates that sense of suspense, that anticipation. It's like the author is saying, keep reading, something big is coming.
And then there's irony, right? Which I always thought was about saying the opposite of what you mean. But there's more to it than that, isn't there?
Oh yeah, definitely. There are a few different types of irony, but one of the most common in storytelling is dramatic irony. That's when the audience knows something that the characters don't.
Oh, that's a good one. It's like in those horror movies where you see the killer hiding, but the character has no idea.
Exactly. And it creates so much tension, right? Because you're just waiting for that moment when the character is going to find out or when everything is going to fall apart.
It's like we're in on the secret, but we're powerless to do anything about it. Okay, let's talk about one more technique, symbolism. How do authors use symbols to make their stories more meaningful?
Symbolism is all about using objects or images to represent something bigger, something more abstract. It adds these layers of meaning to the story.
Can you give us an example? Like, what's a symbol that a lot of people might recognize?
Sure. So think about a dove. A dove literally is just a bird, right? But in lots of stories, it represents peace or hope. And so by using a dove, an author can communicate those ideas without actually having to say the words peace or hope.
So it's kind of like a shortcut, but a really powerful one because it taps into our shared understanding of these symbols.
Right. And it also allows for multiple interpretations. What a symbol means to one reader might be a little different for another reader, which makes the story even richer.
So the takeaway here is that understanding literary techniques helps us to become more active readers. It's like we're not just reading the words, we're also seeing all the work that went into crafting those words.
Exactly. It's like appreciating the skill of a painter or a musician. You start to notice the details, the choices they made, and it just deepens your enjoyment of the whole experience.
It's really about becoming more aware, more conscious of the craft of storytelling. And who knows, maybe this deep dive will even inspire some of our listeners to try their hand at writing their own stories using these techniques.
I hope so. It's amazing how much you can achieve with a little knowledge about the tools of the trade. And who knows, maybe the next great novel is already brewing in someone's mind out there.
That would be awesome. So to everyone listening, keep exploring the world of literature. There's always something new to discover, something that will spark your imagination. And the way you understand the techniques behind the words, the richer your reading experience will be.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Happy reading, everyone.